So let's talk about the issue that you mentioned, and maybe we'll start with you, Representative Radinovich, which is the minimum wage. And of course, that was a very controversial topic last session. Didn't happen. Going to be on the table this session. Maybe you can tell our viewers a little bit how you view the topic and where you think that figure might land in terms of what you'd like to see, and we'll kind of go around the table here and have some conversation about this.
Yeah, so I voted for the minimum wage coming out of the House at $9.50 last year. The senators here know that their bill was $7.75, and they'll have an opportunity to speak to that. But I think that we need to have a number closer to $9.50. If you look at the minimum wage, as I mentioned earlier, tied to inflation from the 1960s, it would be at about $10.75 an hour right now. And if you furthermore tied it to productivity at that same point in time, it would be in excess of $15. And so what we're seeing is that the American worker is much more productive than they had been before, but the wages have remained stagnant. And I think that we can feel that in our towns and cities. 60 to 70% of the students in my district are on free or reduced lunch, and it speaks to the economic condition of their parents. And we understand the effects of poverty on the outcomes of children in school. I personally also, think that if you look at working full-time at the minimum wage right now, you'd make about $15,000 a year. And so we're subsidizing companies who pay wages that aren't sufficient to support, their workers on by providing assistance to them. And I think some of my friends on the other side of the aisle might say something about raising taxes and the disincentive that provides for hard work. And I would sort of pose the question, well, if you could work 20 hours a week or 60 hours a week, and you're still, one car bill away from being wiped out, or, one medical bill away from being wiped out, or if you, work 20 or 60 hours a week and you still can't, provide the basic things for your family, then, where is your incentive for hard work? And so I think that we ought to make sure that we can connect the idea that full-time work should mean that you can support yourself and your family. I understand that, even at $9.50, it's going to be difficult to do that. But if we don't start to have that conversation, if we don't start to try and rectify the situation that we've seen over the last 30 years, we're going to have a growing disparity between people in Minnesota, and we're going to have more children who are, receiving services and being affected by that.
A lot of attention has been directed on and towards the issue of income inequality in Minnesota, in the United States, and there's only so much that we can do as policymakers to address that. I mean, we can look at the safety net for helping folks out who are struggling, but more and more you're seeing hardworking families and Minnesotans struggle to get by despite working full work weeks. I just had an opportunity to meet with Second Harvest Heartland today, and they shared some interesting information about folks who are utilizing food shelves in my district. In the strongest growing segment of my district that's tapping into food shelves are working families, working adults. And I think it just speaks to the struggle that a lot of Minnesotans are facing right now. And so, I believe in a strong safety net that's appropriate, that's accountable. But I also believe that this is one of those votes with the minimum wage where we can take a stand and say, working Minnesotans need to be able to make it in this state. And darn it, our minimum wage is below the federal minimum wage, and there's discussion at the federal level of raising its wage. And so I'm very optimistic that the Senate and the House are going to be able to strike a compromise. I certainly believe that the House position is more in line with where our minimum wage should be in Minnesota. We have to be respectful of challenges faced by border communities and others. But on the flip side, I think this is a chance for us to say there's a problem out there with income inequality, and this is something that we can do. I want to listen to businesses. I want to listen to employers. But at the end of the day, this is one of those opportunities for us to say there's a wrong and an ill in public life, and we can do something about it.
It's interesting, only 5% of people who earn minimum wage are head of household. And so what if we took those 5% and used the job training programs that we have at the federal level and the state level and said, instead of just giving you a little bump so that you continue to live on the edge, let's make sure that you get trained for critical jobs that we need. For example, in greater Minnesota, we are terribly short welders and metal workers. Our healthcare industry is facing a crisis. We don't have enough people going into basic care services. And so what if instead of taking away the opportunity for teenagers to get that first job where they clear tables and they learn how to get there on time and punch in on time, instead of making those jobs more expensive, why don't we focus on the people who really have a need? And then the other question that I never hear answered, lifeguards at the YMCA, 16-year-old lifeguard starts at $9.25 an hour. If we raise the minimum wage to $9.50 an hour, those lifeguards are going to get a bump. Where's the YMCA going to get that money? They're either going to have to reduce programs, they're going to have to raise fees for people coming in the door. No one ever talks about where the money comes from. So while we can all have compassion for families that are struggling, and that is appropriate, we should focus on getting them the education they need so that that mom and dad can really take care of their family and can launch themselves and set an example for those kids that says, you can do this. You can go to college, you can achieve, and you can take care of yourself, stand on your own 2 feet. And I think you would get a lot of Republican support for going to federal conformity. I think that puts us on a level playing field.
Federal
with a lot of
conformity
other
would
states.
mean, you'd mean the level of the
Right.
federal minimum wage.
A lot of our large employers are already there. There's some discomfort among small businesses in the resorts community at moving too high, too fast, because they have fixed costs, and there's only so much they can charge their customers. And so the question is, where does the money come from to pay for the increase? It's good to be compassionate, and it's important. We're on human services committees. We see what people go through. But we have to find a way to actually help them out instead of just giving them a little more and leaving them on the edge.
Representative Abler, and then we'll throw it open here and see what
Oh,
people have
sure.
to say about this.
Well, I think it's important for people to recognize that one side doesn't love people more than somebody else, and that it's a matter of who cares more. I'm a small businessman. I own some commercial property. I rent to 24 small businesses, and they're barely making their rent. And so is the issue about evil corporate America or small business that's not paying enough? The money has to come from somewhere. And so the extra $2 or 25 cents or whatever the change is comes from somebody's budget. If it comes from a small business budget, then that small business, it actually may affect their ability to pay their rent and stay in business. I met a fellow up in Hackensack, a place called Vittles and Joe, and his people get $12, $15 an hour up there, but their base wage is, I don't know, $6.15 or the $7 or whatever. But he said if he had to go to the number that's suggested, he hasn't got the money. And he said he would close. And I don't think he was kidding. He's got a dozen employees. And because there's no margin. He can't raise his hamburgers $1 or $2 to raise the money from. And so if the issue is you want to help, there's different categories of people earning minimum wage. Some of them are students getting a training wage. And so they have this job that they don't want to stay in very long. And then they move to another job that's better. They get a resume and they get worked up. Some of the teens in particular, you have to be careful how you take away these low paid opportunities for them to keep busy and have something to do in the summer. 6 boys. Please get a job doing anything. My wife used to say,
Exactly.
little job. But just for instance, the market pressures push. In today's paper, the Gap is now going to make $10 as minimum wage without a law. At my clinic, nobody will work for less than $10 an hour. And so I just want to caution people as we go into this well-intended thing that every good thing may have an unintended consequence. The Congressional Budget Office said 1 million jobs will be lost. And if those are the 1 million jobs from some of the kids and the training wage and those young teens, and they wind up not having a job and now they have to hang around all summer and get in trouble, that might be a price we don't want to pay. So you have to be cautious. That's my thought.
Yeah, this is something that I've spent a lot of time talking about just today because I happen to have done some interviews and everything else. But, I don't doubt for 1 second, Representative Abler, that you care very much about the people you represent and everyone you meet. You're, well known as being a great guy. But I think that policies do matter, and this is about macro trends in the economy. And what we've seen are a separation between wages and productivity, and that's been detrimental to the people of the state. I mean, there's no question about it. And what I would say is that there are always going to be people at the bottom of the economic scale, and the question is, how do we value their time? How do we value their labor? We can give them job training, but someone else is going to come fill that job that they left then. And so we still have to consider them. I would also like to mention that, Senator Benson, you had talked about the lifeguards. So I just did some quick math, and if they had 2 lifeguards on a day and they paid them $1 an hour more at $10.25 an hour, over the course of a week, I believe they would pay an additional $112. And I think that the YMCA is capable of finding $112 a week. Whether they have to raise over the course of a year membership dues $1 per member or whatever it is. But I mean, the argument is that low prices should be predicated on the low wages that we pay people. I can't accept that. I mean, if you look at a grocery store and what's happened, and this is an example of productivity. So 20 years ago, you used to have somebody who would bag your groceries and check you out. And now, if you look at, you've got a bay with 4 self-checkouts and one person standing in the middle. And so why isn't that person experiencing any of the growth in productivity? They're still getting paid essentially the stagnant wages. And that's the issue for me. And just this, I think last week, 70 leading U.S. economists, including 7 Nobel laureates, came out and said that there's, the weight of the evidence suggests that there's a negligible impact on jobs and that there is a stimulus effect in local economies from paying those people more. So while the gentleman up in Hackensack might have to pay his workers more, it means that they can spend more money in the town, too. They might be able to go out and enjoy a hamburger every once in a while, too. So I think it's absolutely essential that we raise the minimum wage, and I think it should be $9.50 and not a cent less, personally, but we'll see what we can work out with the Senate.
And frankly, my Y on Sundays has 8 lifeguards on. And for swimming lessons, there's more than that. And so your math might work, but the question is who gets to make that choice? Should the legislature dictate to the YMCA that they must bump? If you have minimum wage at $7.25 an hour at the federal level, I believe, and you bump to $9.50, then the lifeguards go up much more than $1. They go up $2.25, because if a person bussing tables has the same relative value as someone who's trained to save people's lives, administer CPR, and deal with emergency situations, those people are going to get a bump. The impact of the minimum wage is to continually bump up wages through the economy. That's a very real impact, and it's rarely calculated in, and so that's why small incremental steps are much more palatable to business, because it gives them time to adjust their infrastructure. And taking a leap to $9.50 is probably going to be detrimental to a lot of those small businesses in Hackensack and in greater Minnesota.
It's $9.50 by 2015, and the minimum wage isn't something new that we're just freshly debating here. I mean, the minimum wage has been raised dozens of times since the 1950s, and there is a weight of evidence that suggests that there is a negligible impact on jobs and a beneficiary impact on the lives of the people who are making the additional wages. Now, my numbers assume that there were 2 lifeguards per day, and we're sort of getting into it. But the bottom line is that not every commodity, not every commodity, not every service relies on minimum wage employees, and so not everything. There's not a total inflationary impact of that, because not everything relies on minimum wage services.
And if I could just add, I think this is an opportunity for us really to make a statement that in Minnesota work should pay. And I respect your concerns with how far we go and how fast we get there. But I think that the concern I've heard today, it really speaks to, I think, an effort to maybe index the minimum wage and provide some certainty for employers and for laborers in Minnesota's economy that we're on a slow growth curve moving forward, and that if you're going to work hard in Minnesota, you're going to be able to raise a family and get by, and not just get by. I couldn't agree more that we need to invest in education. We've got to make sure that we've got infrastructure for the 21st century, and that we play off our strengths in human capital. But at the end of the day, we've got to make sure that folks who are working in particular are able to eke out a living in this economy. And darn it, I don't think the fact that we've failed to raise the minimum wage in the past should keep us from doing what's right in 2014.
Well, let's move on. We'll probably have a chance to talk more about the minimum wage. Certainly not in this program. We'll pick it up in future weeks. There's no doubt about it.
Come up again.
It'll probably come up again. So.